This isn't going to be for everyone. It's just a very odd movie. But here we go. We have a new movie from legendary director Francis Ford Coppola. Let's talk about Megalopolis. There's a lot of legends in the world of Hollywood, but Francis Ford Coppola, this is the guy who made The Godfather, for God's sakes. This man is extremely famous, and his name carries a lot of weight. As a matter of fact, you could really credit him with starting the gangster genre. I think that people like Martin Scorsese probably followed in the footsteps of this guy because of the success of movies like The Godfather and The Godfather 2. He really is an important figure in cinema. So, of course, when you see a movie with this guy's name on it, you're going to be pretty curious. He is not shy about putting his name front and center. He wants you to know, oh, by the way, I made this movie. Look at my name. It's there in big, bold letters. You should pay closer attention to this movie than any of the other movies. Does he let his status and his fame get to his head? I think so, but let's discuss. Megalopolis stars Adam Driver, Aubrey Plaza, Giancarlo Esposito, Shia LaBeouf, and Nathalie Emmanuel. This movie felt immediately to me like I was watching a Shakespeare. The mannerisms, the way people speak in this movie, the way people act, it very much feels like a Shakespeare production. And by the way, I have to admit, I think Shakespeare's a bit overrated. He's just not my type. I don't really understand the hype. But nonetheless, he's extremely popular in the world of productions, and this movie very much reminded me of that. It kind of felt like I was watching that old Romeo and Juliet movie that had Leonardo DiCaprio. You remember how they talked very strange in that movie? That's how they act and talk in this movie. It takes place in a city called New Rome, and this place is very much a descendant of that very famous city. They even still have gladiator matches going on. People are walking around wearing togas. People are walking around eating grapes. This is very much a continuation of the famous city Rome. A man named Caesar is trying to build a new section of the city called Megalopolis using a very mysterious mineral that has kind of otherworld properties but looks very optimistic for the future. But not everyone is down with this man's plan. Some people think that this substance is no good. They think that Adam Driver's character Caesar is a mad scientist, and they are adamantly opposing his decision to build this new section of city. In a lot of ways, Adam Driver's performance in this movie reminded me a lot of Ferrari. He's kind of quiet. He's kind of kept to himself. He's in his own head a lot of the times. He puts his projects first and his relationships and the other people in his life second. You really get the vibe that this is a man who is 100% putting his faith or his efforts completely into his work, and that is very much like Ferrari. Adam does do a great job with what he's given, and I do think that he is an exceptional actor. His main opposition in this movie, the person who really does not like his plans, is played by Giancarlo Esposito, who many people are going to recognize as Gus from Breaking Bad. He plays a very cartoonish mayor. His mannerisms, again, are very strange, very Shakespeare. I'm going to keep saying that because there's something just Shakespeare about this movie, the way it is made. Adam Driver may be one of the main stars of this movie, but I have to say Nathalie Emmanuel does do a great job and makes her presence matter. She really may be one of the most interesting characters in this movie, and I think her and Adam Driver, they do have good chemistry. Her character comes off as a woman who's met her celebrity crush. I guess that's a good way to describe it. She has like apprehension towards him, but she's also enthralled by him, and she wants to get to know more about him, and against her father's best wishes, because her father in this movie is Giancarlo Esposito, the guy who adamantly does not like Caesar. I think she does a fantastic job in this movie, and she is one of the standouts. It feels like you don't see very much of Shia LaBeouf these days, but his method acting is well known among Hollywood. Everyone knows that he gets really into character. There was that one movie where he said, I'll actually fuck somebody if it means making the movie more authentic. The guy really gives it his all, and he does give it his all in this movie. For the longest time, I was trying to figure out, why does he look so weird? And then I realized, oh, he shaved his eyebrows off, and that is always an interesting choice. Never looks good, but you know, people do it when they're planning on drawing on their eyebrows. Laurence Fishburne is basically wasted in this movie. He's basically playing Morgan Freeman's character in Driving Miss Daisy. All he really does in this movie is drive around and tend to the needs of Adam Driver's character. He is literally just there in the background. He says some monologues over the top of the scenes, and I guess that's about his contributions. It seems like a waste. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of talent in this movie that comes off as completely wasted. Dustin Hoffman is in this movie. I don't see a lot of that guy, and I didn't see a lot of that guy in this movie either. His character in the end, I felt like, they should have done more with him. They do have Jon Voight in this movie. This man, he's kind of controversial. He said some very strange things. He doesn't get along well with Angelina. I felt kind of strange seeing him because on a personal level and politic level, I don't agree with some of his statements, but I think he does pretty well in this movie, and it is good to see him acting and getting a chance to be in a prestigious movie with Francis Ford Coppola, even if this movie is not the best use of his or anyone else's time. This movie really does have a fantastic cast, but I think it's all held back by Francis Ford Coppola's overly big ambitions. This movie feels like a fever dream, but the story never really pulls you in. I'll admit, I was curious when I saw the giant statues walking around in the commercials, but those giant statues that you saw in the commercials, their only scene is the scene that you saw in the commercials, and it's not really described. You don't really get any backstory. Are these statues really moving? Is this all in this guy's head? What's going on? I didn't get the answer. That was very disappointing to me. Before this movie came out a few months ago, maybe a month or two ago, Francis Ford Coppola released a very narcissistic and pig-headed commercial for this movie where he was basically trying to paint a picture that all his movies get bad reviews with the critics, but then they end up getting a cult following, and he's just ahead of the curve, and everyone should trust him because eventually his movies end up getting beloved. But I don't think this movie is going to get a cult following like some of his other movies, and that commercial, ick. It was just ick. If you are a great director, you don't need to make a movie commercial talking about how great you are and how everyone underestimates you and doubts you. That just felt very tacky, very disgusting, and just, man, come on. You're better than that. I think he was so focused on his substance and his styles and his visuals that he forgot to create an actually compelling story. My auditorium, my theater full of people, no one was really talking. Nobody, which they're not supposed to actually. Scratch that. My auditorium, people weren't really laughing. I wasn't really getting a lot of engagement. I didn't really feel like I was in an audience with people who were loving this movie. And it really does feel strange to be bad-mouthing a movie from a legendary director like Francis Ford Coppola. This man has made his name for himself, and he is so popular, but that does not mean that he is going to always make great movies. For me, this movie is a 5 out of 10. I think there are glimmers of greatness, but they are sprinkled throughout, and they're very few and far between. And most of the time, I kept looking at my watch thinking, when is this movie going to be over? Because it really felt like it was just taking forever. So this movie actually earns a watch score of 3 because that's how often I kept checking my watch to see how soon I would be freed from this movie. It is not the worst movie ever, but for a famous guy like Francis Ford Coppola, I very much expected a hell of a lot better. I'm disappointed to say the least. Did you guys see this movie yet? Do you plan on seeing it? Please put your thoughts on this movie in the comments and let me know. Did you like this video? If you did, please hit the like button. And if you want to hear more things from me, subscribe to this channel. Later.